So before I start today's episode, I really wanted to talk about my new format. So you guys know for the last 3 or 4 videos, I started this brand new format on my YouTube channel, and it's pretty much where I sit down in front of the camera and talk about multiple gaming and tech articles all in one video. And I really do think really quickly this is going to be the new format moving forward because I absolutely love this format. I can pretty much ramble on for as long as I want. On top of that, I do get multiple topics I would not normally talk about here on my YouTube channel in one single video. Overall, I'm just really having a lot of fun with this brand new format here on my YouTube channel. So for the foreseeable future, I really do think this is the direction I really want to take my YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get in today's video because we do have a lot to cover. First off, the first article that I actually want to touch base on is the fact that Apple is going to be moving into the Indian market, and they are going to have their first retail store. It looks like Apple is going to have their first retail store in India around 2021. So basically next year is when Apple is deciding to move into that market. You guys know for like a while now, cell phone manufacturers, especially the ones that have premium smartphones like Apple and Samsung and things like that, are really starting to have a hard time trying to sell their smartphones because a lot of people just aren't upgrading as frequently as they used to back in the day because smartphones are becoming so good each and every year. There's kind of like a less incentive to actually upgrade their smartphone, so it makes sense. What are you going to be really paying for if you decide to move to that next smartphone? You're not really going to be getting all that much depending on how frequently you do upgrade your smartphones. And then on top of that, of course, smartphones are also a media that's just becoming much more expensive. You look at some of the high-end premium smartphone brands of the world like Samsung, Apple, Google, etc., and you can see their smartphones are becoming much more expensive, and now the normal for these smartphones are around $1,000. And in a lot of cases, of course, they're over $1,000 if you want the best model you can possibly buy with these premium smartphone brands. So you can see basically it's kind of starting to get really hard to try to actually push these smartphones and try to make money each and every year banking on your smartphone brand. But of course, it looks like Apple is actually going to be trying something a little bit different because you can see right here in this video, they in this article, they are trying to push towards the Indian market. And since Apple is trying to push towards the Indian market, it may actually help them in the long run. Now, I know, for instance, when you look at the Indian market for smartphone sales, the Indian market is totally different than other parts of the world because they are known for a lot of cheap brands that come here, like mid-range phones that are very inexpensive, maybe $300, $400, $500, and a lot of people are buying those phones. In India, it is already proven when you look at statistics, when you look at sales figures and things like that, you can really see where the Indian market is not really known to buying all these high-end smartphones and all these premium brands. But that does make sense because that country is just in a totally different area of the world. But the thing that Apple is really trying to get into that market for is the fact that India, as recent, is already one of the biggest markets in the world for smartphones, and they go nutty for smartphones. On top of that, they're very invested in the smartphone market as a whole and things like that. So even though they're not necessarily going into a market where they're buying a lot of premium smartphones, just the fact that they are invested in smartphones as a whole, it may give Apple some more revenue that they wouldn't necessarily get if they weren't in that market. So it is a good move on Apple to actually get into a market, let's say, where there's a market where people are actually buying a lot of smartphones. Of course, they won't really know sales figures until they're actually in that market. So it is actually interesting to see that they are going to be opening up their first Indian retail store in India, and that's actually interesting. One thing I wanted to look at to see, I actually wanted to see if they actually sold iPhones in if they were actually sold iPhones previously in India before, or maybe they haven't. But either way, this is going to be something a little bit different for Apple. Even if they did previously, let's say, actually did sell iPhones in India, just because, well, they are going to have their first retail store. And actually having a retail store like an Apple store is going to be a whole different thing, just because, well, they're not used to that. And of course, it may bring some extra traction. It may get people to buy an iPhone even though they weren't planning on buying an iPhone or buying these different Apple electronics or different devices, just because, well, now they actually have a physical retail store that people could actually go into. They can browse, they can look at. It just gives it a whole nother meaning, and just the fact that you can go inside and actually get hands-on with a lot of these different products, it may change people's minds. But yeah, I know a lot of people in India are actually invested in cheaper smartphone brands. It makes sense for that country, since that is a third world country, of course. A lot of people just don't have a lot of money to spend on things like premium smartphones that are thousands or a lot of money in general, so it makes sense. But hey, it's something different for Apple, so I can see why Apple would want to try to go to that market specifically, since it's one of the biggest smartphone markets in the world, according to statistics and according to just everything we know. That India is just one of the biggest markets for smartphones, and in general, they just love technology in India. India is one of the most aggressive places when it comes to technology. A lot of people are surrounded by technology. They consume technology. They just love technology. Time and time again, it does prove that India would actually be the right market. Whether it's successful or not, we'll have to wait and see in the near future if this is something that's actually going to have staying power, and how well this Indian retail store is actually going to do for Apple. But very interesting. Now, the next one that I have is actually a announcement for another game, because we do have a couple announcements here in this video that I actually wanted to cover, that I'm actually kind of interested in. Now, the first one is actually going to be that PopCap is actually going to be making a brand new game. And of course, you probably are familiar with the company PopCap, because PopCap is actually a company that is known for one of the biggest mobile games around. Of course, you've heard of it. It's called Plants vs. Zombies, and now it is finally announced that Plants vs. Zombies 3 is actually officially announced and is officially available. However, there is one big caveat for Plants vs. Zombies 3. You just can't play Plants vs. Zombies 3 right now, just because if you look at Plants vs. Zombies 3, Plants vs. Zombies 3 is only going to be in one region at the very moment. Let me go ahead and highlight it. Yes, you look at the article, it does say the Philippines. Yes, that's the only market that Plants vs. Zombies 3 is actually in right now at the current moment. I think Plants vs. Zombies 3, just like Plants vs. Zombies 2, as far as I read some other stuff on it is going to be a free-to-play game, just like Plants vs. Zombies 2. I remember Plants vs. Zombies 1 actually being a premium game where you actually had to pay for the download first, and then after paying for the download, then you can play the game. But I think after a while with Plants vs. Zombies, they finally made it a free-to-play game after a while, I do believe. But yeah, it's pretty exciting news that a lot of people have probably been waiting for a new installment of Plants vs. Zombies. Now we got finally a new installment of Plants vs. Zombies. If you never heard or played of Plants vs. Zombies is a tower defense game where you have your team of plants on one side of the screen, and then you have zombies coming at you, and you got to try to stop them from like getting into your house or breaking down your defenses. So yeah, it's a very, I wouldn't say relaxing game per se, but it's a very interesting game, and there is a lot of strategy, especially if you're into strategy games. This may be a game to look at. Of course, Plants vs. Zombie 1 and 2 are already on things like iOS and Android, and the funny thing is with Plants vs. Zombies, it was, I think, originally a mobile game, but then they decided to make it a non-mobile game. So if you wanted to, like, for instance, play it on like your console or like your PC, there is other ways to play this game. They finally did branch out, and it is nice we are finally getting another Plants vs. Zombies game, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been quite some time since we got an actual Plants vs. Zombies game, the traditional game, because I do know they do make a spin-off series called Garden Warfare. I think they made a couple Garden Warfares now, and that's pretty much a third-person shooter along the veins of like something like Splatoon or Gears of War or something like that. So it is nice we finally got another Plants vs. Zombies game. Now it does say it will be rolling out to other regions in the upcoming weeks, and you should be able to get your hands on this game. And I don't really know what to think about this game, but it is nice that we are getting a pretty big game for the mobile industry and for smartphones and for mobile gaming, of course, Plants vs. Zombies 3. So that's very interesting that we are getting this game, and most likely, of course, it'll improve on all the elements that something like Plants vs. Zombies 2 had, or Plants vs. Zombies 1 had. So yeah, very interesting, and it looks very good. I don't know if this is an actual screenshot from Plants vs. Zombies 1, or is this a screenshot from Plants vs. Zombies 3, but whatever the case, most likely you're going to be happy with the game if you do play this game from time to time. Now, it looks like Apple, of all companies, is actually going to be releasing a brand new set of headphones. It's going to be the new Powerbeats. Of course, they already sell Powerbeats with their chip inside. They kind of function like the AirPods function if you ever used Apple's AirPods. Basically, what happens is when you use something like Apple AirPods, you pretty much just open up the case, you put them in your ears, and it automatically connects to your iOS device. So that's very nice, and it looks like this is going to be the case with this, and it looks like they're just going to be an improved version of Powerbeats. Powerbeats were always interesting situation, especially the new ones that are fully wireless, that pretty much have a charging case and pretty much are in the same vein as something like the AirPods or the Samsung Galaxy Buds. They were always a special and interesting case just because they were one of the most expensive headphones on the market. Not only were they one of the most expensive headphones on the market, they were also one of the biggest headphones on the market when it comes to those style of headphones that were truly wireless. So that was actually very interesting. I don't know what they're specifically going to be adding to the new version of this product, but here's some information on this brand new product. Of course, I think they were well over $200 when these things were actually first released, at least the older model of this. You can still buy them on Apple's official website. Of course, you guys know the history with Beats. Apple actually bought Beats, the company, out, and now they own Beats, and now all their products have that new chipset in them, so they automatically connect to your smart device. They play nicely with your iOS device, and that's actually very convenient and very nice. And yeah, if it looks like they're just going to be adding it's pretty much just going to be a better version of the actual Powerbeats that are existing on the market. They'll probably give you better battery life, of course, give you better sound, maybe even include active noise canceling, because of course with the AirPods Pro, of course, did add active noise canceling. That was the biggest reason to buy something like the AirPods Pro over the original AirPods, was to get that active noise canceling feature. So of course they need to give consumers a reason to actually buy the Powerbeats, since the Powerbeats are now going to be in the same realm as AirPods Pro. AirPods Pro and Powerbeats are pretty much neck and neck when it comes to price point, so you have to try to entice people. I know one reason to actually buy the Powerbeats line in general is for people who are into like fitness and maybe do a lot of activities and are always on the go, because I think they're sweat resistant and they just have that really nice fit on your ears compared to AirPods in general. So that's one reason to get these. But again, I can see why people wouldn't want to buy a product like this, because they are inferior to like something like the AirPods, because of course if you look at the AirPods as a whole, the AirPods are something that are just very big, or excuse me, they're just more smaller. Excuse me, I meant to say smaller. The AirPods are much more smaller device than something like the Powerbeats, and they're just more convenient to take around with you. They don't look as big on your head. They're just very sleek, very easy to put on, put off. These ones may take a little bit longer to put off and on, but yeah, it is nice, I guess, that they are deciding to actually update their Powerbeats line of products when it comes to their headphones. And I'm actually curious to see what the headphones will be priced at. It looks like they're going to be priced at $200. And the interesting thing is, it looks like they're going to be Powerbeats, just Powerbeats, I guess, according to this. And they're going to have another one called Powerbeats Pro, which is actually very interesting that they're going to have two lines, I guess, according to this article. And just like the AirPods, you know, you have the regular AirPods and now you have the AirPods Pro. So you have a consumer friendly one, which is the regular AirPods. I wouldn't necessarily call them consumer friendly, because at the price they're actually targeting, it's still pretty expensive for a lot of people. But then they have the premium one, which is the Pro, and now we have the Powerbeats Pro, which are probably going to be, of course, in the same price, which are already on the market as the AirPods Pro, and then we're going to have these ones, I guess, which are going to be, according to this article, $200, so $50 less than Powerbeats Pro. Of course, the Pro are going to have more features. So basically what I was saying before when I was talking about this article, I was saying that they might add some features, but it looks like they might actually be taking away some features, and it looks like it's going to be the cheaper alternative version to the AirPods that are the, I keep calling them AirPods, but the Powerbeats that are currently on the market, which is actually very interesting. It's also very interesting to see the way the market is actually going when it comes to true wireless headphones or true wireless earbuds, because this market is a very crowded market now. We have things like Google making these, we have things like Amazon with their Alexa buds, I think, and then of course we have the Samsung Galaxy buds. We also have Apple making AirPods, and now Powerbeats, and then on top of that we have a whole bunch of different manufacturers who are actually manufacturing alternatives to all these big brands. So if you wanted to buy something a little bit more cheaper, or maybe even a little bit more expensive, if you want better sound quality, if you want better features and things like that. So it is getting very crowded, and it's almost getting very hard to choose what type of true wireless earbuds do you actually want to purchase, and at what price point, and what's suitable for you, because now there is so many options on the market. And these things used to be a dream come true a long time ago, especially when this technology first came out, because having two earbuds that were truly wireless were very hard to actually get working. A lot of times you would have something like latency, maybe the sound would drop out, connection issues and things like that. But I can say over the years these things have almost gotten very good. Of course, you still once in a while get into like connection issues or latency issues, especially when you're watching like videos or movies on your device. You can run into that problem, but they've been pretty good over the years. Now the next story up is the fact that we actually have a new Shovel Knight game. Now, don't get your hopes up, because it's not what you're thinking. It's not actually a new Shovel Knight, so it's not like Shovel Knight 2 if you were hoping that we would be getting something like a Shovel Knight 2. Of course, if you never played Shovel Knight, really quickly, Shovel Knight was originally a 2D platforming game in the vein of like a Mario game, a Mega Man game, and things like that. But it looks like the brand new game is actually going to be a spin-off game, and it's actually, get this, going to be in the vein of Tetris. Of course, we all have heard of Tetris, and this is pretty much what this game looks like. If you look at the picture here, you can see it does look like Tetris pretty much. It looks like an action puzzle game, and these aren't a new concept. There's been a lot of these different ones, whether it's on mobile, whether it's on like a handheld like a PS Vita, a 3DS, a DS, and things like this. So this is not a new concept, but it is a new spin-off for the Shovel Knight franchise, and it looks very interesting. Is it a game that I'm personally going to be interested in, me, myself? Honestly, it's not a game that I would personally be interested in, just because I'm not really a fan of puzzle games to begin with. On top of that, I'm also not very good at them. I do get why people like them, because you do have to think. They are actually relaxing to a lot of people. They're very pick up and play. You can play them just for a little bit and then put them down. You don't have to invest a lot of time in a lot of these different, let's say, puzzle games. So that's something that's basically why a lot of people actually play these games, and why a lot of people consume these games. But yeah, the thing about this game, I do believe it's called Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. Specifically, I want to talk about Pocket Dungeon. The word pocket does actually imply that this is probably going to be a mobile game, but then again, I can see this actually coming to something like the Nintendo Switch, just because, well, the Nintendo Switch is a portable system as well. I can also see this come to consoles, because it does have the Shovel Knight name actually attached to a Shovel Knight, so that does make sense to why it would come to consoles, because if they want to pump out as much money as possible, it would make sense to come to console. But then again, I can see it not coming to console, because, well, if they want to do like a free-to-play model and then have like a lot of microtransactions, which of course these type of games are very good for microtransactions, whether it's limiting you to how long you can play a day, and then you got to buy like a special currency, or like for instance, these games are going to be good games if you want to buy like more items to move you along the game and things like that. But I am glad it's not a standard puzzle game. It does going to incorporate Shovel Knight, so it is going to be some kind of game where you have like RPG elements, you can fight people, you can have combat, you can have all these different elements. It's not your traditional Tetris. And if I was going to play a game that was actually based on Tetris, I would probably play one of these RPG-esque Tetris-like clones, because I think they're very interesting to say the least. And here's an actual gameplay of the actual game, because we do have footage. Now this game is actually being made by Yacht Club Games, so it's not like a third-party developer who is getting the license actually licensed out from Yacht Clubs. As far as I'm aware, you can see it does say Yacht Club Games right there. And here's some gameplay. I'm going to bring it up a little bit bigger. It's called Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeons, and here's a little gameplay, and it does actually look interesting. Again, I really don't think this is a game that I'm actually going to be really playing unless it's a free-to-play game on mobile. I may check this out. There's a big may, because a lot of the times I want to check out some of these free-to-play games on mobile, but I just don't get around to it, or I really don't like the mobile landscape. The mobile landscape is not for me, but a game like this makes sense on mobile because it's very short. It's probably very simple. They can microtransaction this game all to hell if they really wanted to, which I hope they don't, because it does have the Shovel Knight name on them. Honestly, I was really expecting the company behind this, Yacht Club Games, to make like a Shovel Knight 2 or to make another game, because this is actually one company, Yacht Club Games, that is a fantastic company. Sure, they've only made one game, Shovel Knight, but you can see their team knows how to make games and make games well. So it does, for me personally, kind of feel like the company behind this game is really wasting their talents on a game like this, since there's got to be a lot of these different games on different consoles, and especially the mobile landscape. There's got to be so many different games like this. They're really just wasting their talents on this game. So I hope in the future Yacht Club Games actually decides to make something else rather than wasting their talents on a game like this. But I'm sure for a lot of people this will be exciting, and you're probably going to want to try this game when this game comes out and things like that. But there it is. Shovel Knight gets a brand new game. Now the next one here is the fact that Pokemon, of all things, was actually born 24 years ago today. The date that I record this is actually the date that Pokemon was 24 years old. Of course, if you're watching this in the future, that's already gone. I can't really say anything about this, but I did want to actually talk a little bit about this. Not that it's too crazy or too interesting, it's just the fact that I'm a person that actually grew up with Pokemon. I got it around the time the game actually launched. I love Pokemon. I don't necessarily play it today. I kind of got tired of Pokemon. The formula got stale to me already, but I still am one of those people who never really jumped on the bandwagon. I played it like basically when it came out a long time ago, so I'm actually pretty happy as a person that I actually got to experience Pokemon when Pokemon first came out. I think my first ever Pokemon game was Pokemon Red, and then I got Pokemon Yellow, which was a spin-off to Pokemon Red and Blue. And then I got pretty much all the games after that, and yeah, Pokemon is just one of those games that'll always be in our hearts, and it's one of the biggest franchises today, especially when you look at something like a company like Nintendo. It's one of their biggest IPs, not their biggest, but it is one of their biggest intellectual properties. Of course, all the characters are very likable. We have things, of course, the mascot most likely being Pikachu. It makes sense. Even if you're not into something like video games, a lot of people can just recognize Pikachu and say, oh yeah, I know. Pikachu, that's a very recognizable character. Of course, Pokemon just screams memorabilia. It just has a lot of fan base. On top of that, everything's cutesy about it. We have Pokeballs. Pokeballs are very cute. Overall, it is cool, and it shows how fast time really goes as well when it actually comes to your life. And who would have thought Pokemon would have came out 24 years ago today? And that's actually interesting. It looks like it came out on February 27th. 1996, so in the 90s, and it's also very interesting that it came out in actually February, which I did not know. I don't really do all too much research on some franchises, but yeah, that's got to be pretty cool. And I'm still actually also really surprised that the formula, if you think about it and you think about the games, Pokemon is a franchise that really hasn't evolved from game to game all that much. I'm surprised that it still sells millions, if not trillions, of units of games each and every time they make a brand new one. And it also shows that a lot of people don't really care if Pokemon never evolves. People will still buy Pokemon even if it's just the same old formula: catch Pokemon, train Pokemon, battle Pokemon. battle like an Elite Four and things like that. But yes, it's cool that Pokemon is actually 24 years old. And the thing that makes this the thing that makes Pokemon even much more recognizable than it ever was back in the day is just the fact, of course, you guys know a couple years ago with Pokemon Go came out and everybody was talking about Pokemon Go. Whether you were a fan of video games, whether you were a fan of Pokemon, or whether you never played video games at all. I remember Pokemon Go was in the news. I remember people were getting in trouble for Pokemon. I remember these different articles where people who weren't even Pokemon fans were playing Pokemon Go because the hype was real, and that thing was actually a game that did change the way we look at games today, and that was actually a really cool thing that Pokemon could have ever done. Even if you don't like Pokemon Go or don't like Pokemon as a whole or don't play mobile games, that really was a craze, and that was something that we're probably never going to experience ever again. And that thing, oh my god, Pokemon Go. But yes, happy birthday to Pokemon. Pokemon turns 24 today, which is actually very interesting, and it shows how fast time actually does move. Now, the next one on my list is not really interesting. It's just actually about how Microsoft, of all companies, is actually adding a game to its Edge browser. You may know or not know that Google actually has a game actually in its Google Chrome browser. The only way to access the game in the Google Chrome browser is actually if you don't have any internet connection, so you may not experience it. But basically, it's a dinosaur like free running game where you basically just jump over these cactus and things like that. Most likely you've probably seen it, maybe not, but either way, it is an interesting game. As long as you don't have internet connection, you have to have no internet connection, excuse me, to play the game. And it looks like this is going to be the same scenario as the Google Chrome browser. Here's the game right here. If you're curious about the game, you can see a little animation here, and you can see you're basically on a surfboard and you're basically just going through the water. It is kind of a copy and paste of what Google has actually done with the Google Chrome browser when you have no internet connection. And the funny thing is about this is the fact that they are actually taking this another step up. It's going to have touch controls, it's going to have keyboard controls, and then on top of everything else, it's also going to support controllers. So they're really taking this as serious as possible for a game, let's face it, that most likely most people aren't really going to play or even notice it's there, because it's kind of like an Easter egg. And you know, these things companies really don't promote. You have to go on the internet and look up like Easter eggs for operating systems, Easter eggs for programs, Easter eggs for games, Easter eggs for all these different things, and you may not even know this is a thing. But I just wanted to bring this up because it's actually funny that they are deciding to copy Google when it actually comes to this implementation of like an Easter egg in their own web browser. I'm not too sure when this is actually coming out, but it does say it is going to be coming out shortly, so you should have a chance to try this out if you want to try this out. Just make sure you go to an Edge browser that Microsoft owns, of course, and make sure that you have no internet connection. But I don't know how many people also are actually using things like the internet browser in or the Edge browser from Microsoft, just because I feel like a lot of other people like things like Chrome or like Safari and things like that. But it's just interesting, and I wanted to actually talk about this because a lot of people may not even be aware of this. Now, the last one that I actually have to talk about today in this video is actually going to be about GOG. You guys may know what GOG is, G-O-G. It's a computer-based client that allows you to play games, kind of like Steam or the Epic Game Store or Origin. Of course, it's not the most popular one out there. The most popular one out there on PC, of course, is still Steam. Steam is one of the biggest clients. It has some of the biggest games out there and things like that. And Steam's always probably going to be the #1 client on PC for playing games. But I wanted to talk about this because it looks like GOG just updated their refund policy. And I've talked about refund policies here on my YouTube channel. This is not my first time. And I am actually glad when companies update their refund policy, because it is about time that a lot of different companies update their refund policy, because it's not fair to the consumer that you can't get a refund. I know a lot of companies out there are probably like, hey, you bought the game, you should have known what you were buying. And in the age of the internet, there's no excuse to not know what you're buying. But the problem is there's always those cases where maybe like your daughter or your son, your kids might buy a game, or maybe someone might play a prank on you and actually buy a game, or maybe, like for instance, one person was like quote unquote drunk and they accidentally bought a game while they weren't paying attention. Whatever the case may be, I still think people have a right to return the game. So it is nice they are updating their policies. Here's the policies in play right here. It looks like GOG is going to allow a 30-day limit. So you can own the game up to 30 days, and then you can get a yeah, you can get a refund. You can get a refund after 30 days. And the thing that makes this weird is just the fact that apparently this article and some other articles I've read about GOG, they're not actually going to give you a play limit. Now, for instance, things like Steam and things like Valve yeah, things like Steam and things like some other clients actually do give you a play limit. You have, like, I know on Steam you have 14 days, like this article says. You have 14 days to return the game, and then on top of that, you can't play the game over 2 hours. And the play limit makes sense because if you're playing games for like 30 or 40 hours or a long time, let's say, and you try to return the game, there should be no way in heck you should be allowed to return the game, because most likely that does mean you played the game. And I can see in an instance where somebody tries to beat like a linear game that's only like 15 or 20 hours in that 30-day time limit, and request a refund and say they didn't like the game, but you know from their play log most likely they like the game. Of course, just like what I just said about how somebody could buy a game on your account, or maybe your kids can play with your device and buy a game, or maybe there's also, like I said, or I didn't actually clarify this up, there's also situations where you're unsure if like a game is going to be for you. You did the research on the game and you saw a lot of stuff, people talking about it, but it looked like a good game. People swore it was going to be for you, but for some reason the game's not for you. That's also another reason why refunds need to be a thing, because there are situations where you just don't know how it's going to feel to play. You have to actually play it as a person. You can look up information. You can hear people talk all about it, but you're unsure. You buy it, and then you waste your money. But, yeah, the play limit, there should be a play limit intact. And I do think most likely they're probably going to have to implement some type of play limit in play, where they know if you played the game over like 10 hours, then you just can't get a refund, because that means most likely you enjoyed the game. Of course, there's always going to be, again, those weird cases like I just said, where maybe your kids plays your own computer and you're away from it and you didn't get a chance to play it, so you deserve a refund because you haven't tested. But I guess all these companies are just going to say, well, it's your fault. You should have made sure your stuff was more secure from like your friends and family, from like having access to your computer or having access to your console and things like that. And that really does show that these policies in place are actually good for the consumer. They're not anti-consumer, and I do like this. There's still some places that don't give out good refunds, and the refunds policies are absolutely bad. We have things like Nintendo, who still aren't good with their refund policies. We also have things like Sony. You guys know Sony is not the best of companies when it actually comes to their refund policy, so I hope more companies actually implement it. 30 days is actually a very long time. Of course, 14 days is still something, but 30 days is actually pretty generous. I was surprised when I actually saw this article and they were talking about how, oh, you get a 30-day you get 30 days to refund your game, because most likely before then you would even know if you like the game or not like the game. But I am glad that GOG, of all companies, is actually updating their refund policy. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for today's episode. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.